Welcome to Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, curious conversations for the anxious, frustrated, dejected, and bored. I'm Travis.
And I'm Jessie. So often we're held captive by screens, schedules, and media that's mind-numbing and polarizing. This leaves us seeing dimly through a fog. We want to spark more imagination and a better awareness of God's presence in the everyday.
Join us on a fun journey of discovery and curiosity as we look at the ordinary through the lenses of joy, wonder, beauty, and hope. Hey, welcome to our conversation on goals and New Year's resolutions. It is getting to the end of January, so some of us are still trying to make it work, white knuckle on these New Year's resolutions. So we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions today and why they tend to fail and how we can do different things to help that.
I hate goals.
Man. Oh my gosh. You hate goals? Are you serious?
I hate the word goals.
Okay, because you're all about some goals.
No, I like
daily
planning.
You're planning and giving me lots of goals.
I like structure. I do not like setting a finish line goal.
Okay.
And I guess yeah.
Okay, interesting. We'll talk more about that. So yeah, New Year's resolutions. It's 2024 and...
Do you have any?
I think my main one for 2024 is so I'm growing out a pretty decently sized good beard, which I've done in the past, but there always comes sort of a time in which if you're not taking care of your beard good maintenance, the beard oils, the really good washing, there's always a time that your beard just starts smelling like weed eater exhaust.
Cheese.
And like Greek yogurt and Funyuns, even if you never eat those things. So it's just like you have to have some responsibility, more responsibility, I think, to own and operate a beard. Mm-hmm. And I know, so like a few years ago, I remember doing a goofy video on like flossing my beard. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And I think like, while that was a joke, maybe I should actually try that.
You're getting there.
So I'm getting there. I want to have more credibility. So my goal with 2024 and my beard is better beard care, and then just growing credibility with welders and other blue collar guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the beard will do that.
I love beard jokes, and so I real quick, I saw some hilarious online, a couple jokes on beards. So a couple quotes. So one is, wisdom doesn't grow on trees, it grows on faces, someone said. So, and then this is my favorite one. Sideburns are just two sad tombstones to what might have been. To what might have been. So that's...
Oh, you used to have some killer... chops, like sideburns.
I did. In high school in the 90s, man, I was rocking some, as were a lot of dudes, but rocking some pretty good. And then later, I ended up looking like ludicrous I had crazy things that were just, When I used to substitute teach around 2007 or something, and kids would be like, Luda. So I had
from North Dakota.
I had sideburn cred, I guess, for a little while with mainstream rapper. So anyway, there's a meandering thing. What about you? New Year's resolutions, goals?
Mine's pretty simple. I typically lean on eat well and move more. I just really want to eat better quality food, and like I said, I'm not goal oriented, like I'm going to lose 20 pounds or anything like that. I just know that I feel better, and my mind is clearer if I'm, exercising and eating well.
Yeah. Do you have any, so I'm kind of talking about like weird, I guess my goal around the beard might be, is that kind of weird or goofy?
So weird.
So weird habit goals. Do you have any weird weird goals or habits or?
Like I said, I'm not thinking so much on goals as much as just ways of living. But something I do that's a weird habit is I do my best planning and work in the bath on my phone.
In the bath. Yeah, that's kind of a work hazard too, isn't it? I mean, if you
It could
drop
be.
your phone and
Yep, if I drop my
computer.
phone or
Okay.
accidentally take a
So
video and
your office. Kids, I have my office bath this morning. Don't.
well, that's why I do it is to have quiet, to
Yeah.
not be interrupted, and just that space to get work done where I can really focus.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the only reason I do it.
Gotcha. No, it's warm. It feels good too.
It's
So.
the only place to hide in a family of 7.
Yeah, this is true.
So, yes, when we are having this conversation about resolutions, the idea of like everybody knows they don't go well for most people, but like research has shown that 80% of resolutions fail, and really almost 65% are just done before the end of the first month. So, there's a quote by Annie Dillard that says, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." And I think that's really kind of foundational for this conversation is that focusing on an end goal is not really effective. And it's really the daily rhythms and choices and habits that we form and are formed in
Yep.
that shape our brain, shape our routines and systems, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. I love Dillard's quote too because yeah, it's sort of just it's kind of like it reminds us too that yeah, like just we're being formed like we are forming our days by the habits we do, the little habits and the little activities. They're definitely, but then we're being formed also then by sort of the end of all that. So these years later that daily it was all these little things that we did or didn't do or could have done better or had more healthy things, like we're gonna sort of our life will in a way be a byproduct of that. So it kind of makes it both kind of inspiring to me that these little changes we can make can have a significant impact, but also to not underestimate the value of them. So
And that we're malleable and formable always. Like things aren't fixed.
For sure. With the failure rate of New Year's resolutions or major goals, this idea that we're looking for maybe a dramatic change or outcome, or some kind of improvement, all good things. So then, what is happening? Why these tend to be just don't work out? And kind of had the image as I thought about this of like setting or trying to start a fire, like a bonfire. And so it's like, this has been helpful to me to think of it this way, but it's like we need, like, to start a fire, you need a spark, to start. So, I mean, the goal, whatever this thing that you want to do is the spark. I mean, that is what's the inspirational thing creating what you're then trying to do. But what I think then happens is it's like we're just trying to set this start this fire with just the spark, and realizing, well, that it's not going to take off. I mean, the work. So the idea then is that if we don't do the work of gathering the sticks, of actually also forming the sticks into a structure, because maybe you're over the fire with trying to light it, and you do have kind of sticks, but they don't have air, they don't have space, they don't have the right way to breathe and have the flame get going and go. It's not going to work. What is the systems I need to have in place for the day? What are the things that I need to do to change maybe my life, maybe my patterns, I can say that I want to read 10 books this year. But if I'm not actually creating space in my day or in my week to actually read, I mean, the spark of the idea isn't necessarily going to be enough. There's a great book called Atomic Habits, an easy, proven way to build good habits and break bad ones, from the author James Clear. And I'm just going to pull out a few of the quotes that I found that kind of go along with the analogy of the fire, and why habits can tend to fail and what we can do differently. And so one of the things that he said is, right off the get-go, is that it's so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. So too often, he says, we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. And and then he goes on to say that you should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results. Mm-hmm. And that is a huge piece of it. I think we're always looking right away to the immediate, what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not changing. Oh, this, And so he kind of likens it to complaining about not achieving success despite working hard is like complaining about an ice cube not melting when you heated it from 25 to 31 degrees. Your work was not wasted. It is just being stored. All the action happens at 32 degrees. Mm. So, yeah, that's kind of a good way to see that what you're doing in your, daily moments of creating change that seem very small, whether it's just a new way to orient your time or to make space for something, it will have an effect. Hang in there. But it's the trajectory that you're on. Last couple things on this, and he says, is that, and this is another key part, bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. So he would say, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And I think that really resonates for me.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't have sometimes amazing goals, life-changing goals. But if our systems in place aren't there to support it, if we're not gathering the firewood to make the actual fire with the spark, it's not going to work. It's not going to light up. And he kind of then pivots, and this is where we'll end, kind of his insight here, but he talks about how we need to shift our outcome approach to more of also seeing it as an identity of who we want to become. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing, he says, to say, I'm the person who wants this. It's something very different to say, I'm the type of person who is this. And so he then goes on to say that, for instance, the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician.
Yeah.
Switching that identity.
Yeah, no, that really makes me think about ultimately, like, becoming something, anything of value, I think needs to be kind of grounded in this idea of belovedness. Because if we set our goals on things to gain others' approval or to find our worth in becoming this thing, then our goals are like kind of oriented or whatever. But Henry Nouwen has a quote where he, talks about we need to spend the rest of our lives becoming the beloved. Now, let me explain. Like, many of our listeners are, identify with a Christian faith, and so the idea of belovedness is that we are wholly loved and children of God, and that we have to have our attention and our awareness always on the fact that we are being loved every moment of every day. And so in the conversation around like habits and routines and systems and goals, it's like if the way that you approach your the things you want to see happen, what you want to become, your belovedness, and receive kind of God's presence in every moment of every day. Like, you're going to be more successful and also have the right desires as far as your goals. I think about, I've heard 3 main categories of problems that people have that they set like goals around or resolutions around is money, body, your body, and problems, or I'm sorry, money, body, and relationships. So, like, back to that James Clear's idea on becoming something, instead of I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to become a runner, might be a focus that you're going to create systems around this life of what a runner does to become a runner. And there's also no end to it.
Right.
It says, I just want to become this. I want my life to be shaped and formed around it. When it comes to money, people might have issues with spending too much or whatever. And then they decide, I want to be more resourceful or a good steward of my money. And so that identity piece is what changes about my whole life if I'm going to be resourceful.
Right.
And then with relationships, it's like you think of, man, I'm always getting in trouble because I'm not helping around the house or not doing the dishes enough or whatever. I this year I'm gonna do more dishes. No, like I'm gonna be a servant.
Are you giving me a goal right there?
Yeah. Oh, it was kind of just a
But
nudge.
I am doing more dishes.
How about laundry?
Okay, let's add it. But let's pace ourselves.
All right.
There's
That's
2
not
goals.
my point.
Okay.
But becoming a servant is that mindset shift of like, I'm going to live my life in service of others and be formed in that.
Yeah. So I kind of go back to, so I love what you said about Nowlan's quote about, is it becoming the beloved? Yep. And knowing that when it comes to God and his love for us, and that's something I really want to lean into this year as well, thinking of just like dwelling on God's delight in me. I read something recently about, I was talking kind of about the joy of God and how that theologically, we all believe, or, we as Christians, we aspire to believe that, we know that God intrinsically loves us. Jesus, gave his son for us and gave his life for us. And, but how often do we actually reflect on or hear that God likes us? Because there's that's a whole different sort of energy around the word like. Love has more weight, feels like, but like sort of just being delighted in by God and kind of contemplating that and reflecting on that and praying about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think contemplation and prayer and makes me think of with these systems and structures, there has to be a place for rhythm, like a flow in and out of activity and doing, and then just being. So I know you and I talk a lot about curiosity, contemplation, and cultivation. And I see those largely as kind of like rhythms for soul care. And one of our good friends, Stephen Smith, has this idea in his books, and he writes about it in his Substack. But that the abundant life that Jesus promised us is going to be more experienced if you learn to live in rhythm. And so I think as we approach our goals and set systems in place, keeping in mind the rhythms of curiosity, contemplation, and cultivation will give you an aim to be still and quiet and experience that delight that God has for you, as well as listen to his voice.
Right.
And then when you move into cultivating, that's the goal setting. That's I see clearly what my focus should be on right now.
Right. So as we kind of put a bow on this and close this down, because I feel like you're pretty good at the part of rhythms and systems and kind of that part of things. So, when we think about shifting sort of from, for instance, like if a goal for you is, this year we want our family to spend more time together, or we want to have more quality time, and great goal. But as you're creeping into the end of January and February, and we're so much creatures of habit, and everyone's schedules are hectic and things like that. Like, what are maybe just a few examples of, maybe if we take just a couple examples of what it looks like to, when we talk about systems and structures, or, and I think you hear that and it makes sense, but like practically, like the shift then would be, to, in that case, for quality time, like describe that, like taking it from a goal to a thing that starts to become ingrained.
Yeah, I think that what's really cool is we picked up that, and I'm just going to share this as a framework. There's a book by Justin Whitmel Early called The Common Rule, and he talks about 4 daily kind of patterns or habits, and 4 weekly habits. And this to me really relates to family and relationships, because it's about community. And kind of the idea of like your rule of life, or these habits that you say, this is what's important. And so, looking at our year, you and I want to spend more quality time together, you and I, and then with the kids intentionally. Mm-hmm. So this structure of like daily, we have one meal together for sure. Because we have teenagers and they make their own breakfasts and lunches. It's not like we have to eat together. They can make their own food. But we take turns cooking, and some of that's real fun because we do it together. Right. Or put on music or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then we have a meal together. And then usually around that meal, we want to focus on a small reading, or a small prayer, or what are we thankful for, or maybe the daily examine, where we're looking at just things that are bringing us joy, and things that are really hard, right, things that we're hopeful for. Mm-hmm. Do that with the kids of any age. And then we always do something fun too. So it could be, we found this app that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like charades, but with words, and and different things like game nights, and when it's warm, go outside and play football. Yeah. Those are the rhythms that just say, it doesn't have to be the same thing every week. It doesn't have to get stagnant, but that we have connection around, if our goal is quality time as a family, we want to be connected, right, become connected. So connection is, I'm not looking at my screen. I'm putting that down for 2 hours. I'm cooking. We're playing. We're talking about meaningful things.
Yeah, and that's a good example of like even the identity shift. Like, we want to be connected. Mm-hmm. We want that, like we want to be a connected family, and it shifts to that identity of, this is who we are. This is who we're trying to live out of that. Yeah. I also love when goals can, and I think that's when we look at the ones especially that involve others, I think there's a huge aspect to joining in together and creating the rhythms and stuff together, because it also feels, maybe there's some accountability, but it also feels shared. It feels like there's new creativity, so like I think of like what you're describing with the family thing, and whether it's carving out, well, which day of the week? Is it a Sunday where we kind of lay our phones down and screens and try to be just outside together a lot, or whatever that is? But when you can sit down and together get other ideas around that, like, how do we want this to look? And others are, whether, this is a family example. So yeah, you got kids throw in their ideas, and they have great ideas. It's usually the best ideas. And they own it, and it's more shared than it is mom and dad saying this is what we need, especially with teenagers, because then it's like they're part of that, they're part of crafting it, and it feels like from the get-go it's just becoming this shared family identity versus we're making your week more boring, or you don't want, and I feel like there's so much more buy-in and stuff, so it just feels like whenever goals can involve others as well, lastly for me on this is I'm doing a study of a book on emotional intelligence, incredible book by Scott Allender, but it's two other guys, and so not just me but two other guys, both creating the rhythm of when we're meeting, how often, what we're doing, and kind of that accountability again of like doing it, but also it just feels like it's shared, and it's there's so much more life in it than me sitting there trying to unpack this book and not have someone to talk about it with, especially in that case as another guy or something. So
yeah, and you guys always have fun and eat good food first.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta
yeah,
make it fun, and that's the cool part of it. So
yeah, it's not all serious.
Yeah. So any other final thoughts on any of this, or?
Yeah, no, I just think it's a really important thing to set your attention on. Like you said, a lot of people are frustrated because the things that they want to get to, they're not seeing the habit change yet, and wondering why they can't change. And I had somebody ask me recently, like, I have this personality that's just always in my head and always worried and all this stuff. And can I even change? I've been this way my whole life. Nothing has ever changed yet. I'm in my 30s. Like, is it even possible to change? Right. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we are malleable, because of our brains are rewiring all the time to create new pathways. Like, I talk a lot about patterns, and it's like the hope is, like, change is absolutely possible, especially, I say often the way you do something is sometimes actually even more powerful than what you're doing. And what I mean by that is you can come at a goal with intensity and grind and maybe some fuel, like you said, like you got that spark, and you can burn out real quick because it's sort of the wrong energy to come at your goal with.
Right.
When you come at things with security and being present and aware and, with the right desires and stuff, you come at what you want to become in a way that knows you're already secure, you're already loved, you are just moving in this flow, in this direction that is right, and that you just put in a little every day. And that Annie Dillard quote, I'll just say it again, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. So just remembering that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good. And I think kind of closing with back to Atomic Habits and some of the advice in there is that, again, about the trajectory. We have grace for ourselves too, and knowing this is a journey. Like he talks about, think of it as like turning the nose of a plane. Just it's as you're approaching this new, place you want to grow in, by turning the nose of the plane just 3 degrees. That's the difference between flying from Los Angeles, difference between flying from there to New York to Washington, D.C., that 3 degrees from D.C. to New York. So it just kind of shows, again, it's about the trajectory, staying on the course, knowing that just small improvements, and sometimes we're going to go backwards, and sometimes, it's not always linear, but those small improvements in whatever we're trying to change or work on, over time, cumulatively add up and melt the ice. Or a 1% daily change, he would say, end of the year, 37% change in that thing. So again, it seems it's really about the little things and just trying to stick with that.
Yeah.
Rather than, I'm trying to change this thing, It's week 2, haven't seen change happen. Crap, failed again. We can't do, and then we beat ourselves up and we can't do it, and then we quit trying to do habits and change because we're not disciplined enough. But it's like reversing, I guess. The paradigm is more craft the little disciplines.
Yeah. Well, I even think about just that one last example in terms of relationships, and like you and I with our marriage, like we have to put a lot of work into staying connected, and so that we're, we both have very kind of passionate, like intense personalities, and so we can,
which means we fight a lot.
We have sparks. But we know it's something we have to work on all the time. And so like one small little, like 1% thing is, instead of trying to just get that 2-3 hour date night every week, which we do still try to do, it's the thing that actually changes us most is a 30-second hug. Like, instead of just like a pat on the back and a quick holding each other for 30 seconds, like there's research that shows that it releases oxytocin and just that connection that comes from a longer hug. Right. And 30 seconds isn't that long, but like literally if 2 or 3 times a day, even just once a day, it makes a huge change as far as connection. Yeah. And that, that safety in a relationship. So
definitely has. All right. Well, that is it for this conversation. Hope there's been something in it that's been helpful or thought-provoking or encouraging in any way. So thanks again for joining us. See you next time.